from the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's 10 Talk.
It's time for FLA Law, brought to you by the personal injury attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
Good evening. It is Tuesday, and that means FLA Law on the radio. Once again, we are here to answer your questions regarding the law. My name is Matthew Noyes, and I'm one of the law partners at the law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, a personal injury law firm that has been serving Tampa Bay, for 70 years. This is the year we celebrate our 70th anniversary or birthday. We have been proudly helping those injured in car accidents, trip and falls, work injuries, and other types of negligence, and also Social Security disability for 70 years. We wouldn't have been able to do that if Guy Perenich and Frank Muscarella and Bob Carroll didn't lay the seeds for us to continue their journey of representing and fighting the insurance companies for those who sometimes don't have a voice. But you do have a voice, and you can exercise that voice today here for the next hour, because we are live on the radio to answer your legal questions regarding personal injury, car insurance, car accidents, trip and falls, work injuries, Social Security disability, and really any other kind of question that you would like to ask. I'm not here alone. I have my friend and law partner, Lori Robinson, here as well. Lori, thank you again.
Always enjoy coming on the show.
Yeah, Lori and I were here last week at this time, and we had a good chat regarding the law. And we want to engage you all to chat with us. I was going to say let's have a Let's Stump Lori contest. But
how about stumping you?
but I didn't think she'd come back if we had to try to stump her.
The lawyer, right?
Stump the lawyer. But if you wanted to give us a call at 727-441-3000. If you have questions, comments, or even concerns about the law, the legal system, and such. If you don't want to hear your voice, but you still have a question, you don't want to be on the radio, we are also live on our Facebook feed page, and that's at Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. Perenich is spelled Perenich, and then Caulfield, Avril Noyes. You can't miss us. We are here live. Lori and I are waving to you right now on Facebook, and we welcome you to type in your question on Facebook, and we'll be happy to tackle those questions as well. So, Lori, before we begin, I think we're going to have our main focus, I think, tonight would be good to be talking about Social Security disability, because we have helped so many people fight that
important
battle.
Area.
But before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? I know you've been on the show all the time, but it's still good to refresh those faithful listeners and the new listeners a little bit about you, but also about the firm in general.
I was going to say that this won't necessarily mean anything to listeners unless they've been around quite a long time, but I couldn't help but notice in one of our conference rooms an old Perenich and Carroll sign.
All right. I found that the other day.
Did you?
Yes.
Did you? So the thing that I love, being a Clearwater person, I was born in Clearwater, and we've often joked literally in the Morton Plant Hospital. I will not say how many years ago now, but being a Clearwater person from the period of the smaller Clearwater to now our great, basically metropolitan area in the Tampa Bay area, I really appreciate this law firm because it was, as you shared, Guy Perenich got it started with Frank Muscarella, and then added Bob Carroll in the early 60s in a time when things were not specialized. So you really didn't have people that were special in a particular area. And so Guy took to heart and brought the other fellows on board the idea of specializing in personal injury, which is really kind of its own little area. So I'm happy that I've been able to be a part of that. Amazing to me, I'm entering my 27th year with the firm.
With the firm.
Yeah, and I've been practicing law here now officially longer than anywhere else. But my career, I went to the University of Florida and graduated from law school there, and then went down to West Palm Beach, and I was in the public defender's office for a decade down there, and then I've been back here quite a long time now. Came back to help my mother. So it's.
But you have Florida State connections as well.
Yes, my undergraduate degree was Florida State, and so I always joke that I never ever lose the big game.
That's right.
That's the way we lawyers are. We can argue either side.
That's exactly right. I do have to tell the story. It's not really about the law, but it's about our office, and really what our team likes to do is. During football season, we did during college football season. We got to pick our team, and every time your team won a game, you got a football added to your window. Well, I picked USF because I'm a USF grad. And Lori picked.
Yes.
Who'd you pick?
Well, now, of course, I could have gone with either University of Florida or Florida State because I undergrad FSU, law school Florida. But one of the other team members was kind of an aficionado and fan of the University of Florida, so that's fine. So it seemed appropriate that I would get Florida State University.
Yeah. Well, and in hindsight, it would have been much better if you picked the Notre Dame.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. And you've been introducing me. I hadn't really followed quite so much, but the wonderful young coach and his wonderful attitude and the young quarterbacks were really wonderful.
Yeah.
But with FSU, it really took me back to my early days because dating myself, but I actually attended Florida State University for undergrad just before I went to law school the year that Bobby Bowden went to Florida State. When I was at Florida State, they were kind of like they were this year because I only had like a couple of footballs on my window. Everybody else had quite a few.
Well, I think you only had one.
No, I had
did
two.
You have two?
No,
Okay.
and this caused me to pay a little more attention because I normally wouldn't, depending if there's a particular player or whatever, that I might kind of get into it. But because of our little competition, so to speak, no, I'm quite attuned. There were two, but that was it. And it was pretty paltry compared to everybody else.
That's right. We had somebody pick Georgia.
Yeah.
Only because she knew that they were ranked number one. I don't think she had any connection with it. But then she started watching.
Yeah, no, it
Georgia
games a little
too.
element of interest. It was fun.
And Erin loves Clemson, and so she had Clemson. And Christine had her daughter going to UCF,
right.
So she picked UCF. And then we had another one who didn't have any idea about college football at all. My son picked the Tennessee Volunteers for her, and so they did. So she did pretty good.
That was a very good pick.
Yes, but none of us picked Notre Dame, and we probably should have.
We
picked
should
Notre
have,
Dame.
right? Exactly.
So we'll see what happens in the next game.
That's right.
That they play.
Now, is that the big championship?
It's the championship.
Okay.
Then against Ohio State.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right. Okay.
But Paul Porter can talk all about that on Saturday morning. But we are happy to be here to talk about the law. And we can even talk about football too. I'm okay talking about football or baseball because we can always incorporate law into a sport.
Absolutely. You've got those rules. And if you don't follow those rules, you're not going to have a good game.
And you can't really win a legal case without having a whole team. And that's why Lori and I work together on all our cases. So it's a team of lawyers, but it's also a team of legal assistants.
Absolutely. We could not do what we do without our full team, everybody playing their part.
Right. So we can incorporate law into sports and sports into law. So that's the way we get to write off the baseball games on our taxes as business expenses now. But no. So if you have questions, it's 727-441-3000. Lori said she was born and raised in Clearwater. So Lori and I came down in 76. So Lori and I sometimes share stories about old Clearwater. And just last week, you had a little taste of old Clearwater, although it's still there. And that's at the Durry Curl.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So in celebration of my birthday, which actually was great, a friend of mine that I've known since junior high days, back when they had junior high, now it's middle school or something. But among the places we went, we did go to John's Past, a very cute little beach bar called the Bamboo Bar and Grill, which was fun. But the special treat was the dessert at the Dairy Curl on Gulf to Bay.
We used to stop there on a regular basis. My dad would take us there, and we would just get the dipped chocolate, and never realizing how messy that really was. As soon as you dip the ice cream in the hot chocolate, and then you bite into that frozen, that hardened chocolate.
Well, what we were reminded of is how large their servings are. Now, I'm a great fan of the soft serve, and I like the swirl. That's my favorite. But even getting like just a small or a medium, they're like huge.
Right.
You get a really great deal. Yeah. So I highly recommend Dairy Crow.
Right. No, that's great. We have been around in Clearwater for a long time, Lori, a little bit longer than me, but we've really seen it grow. We've really seen, I mean, there used to be bumper stickers that say, "Pray for me, I drive on US 19." And it's still the case, but 19 has really changed. But
Yes.
there's still a horrible number of car accidents from people not paying attention. And now 19 has less lights. And so I'm not sure if that reduces the number of lights because it causes people to, get used to just keep going down from Countryside Mall almost all the way to St. Pete now.
Right. I mean, it's a better roadway. It took so very long for us to meet in any way the actual traffic demands.
Right.
But of course, it allows for people to go faster. And I will say, doing personal injury all these years, I'll have somebody right on my tail, and I'm thinking to myself, what are they thinking?
Right. No,
I mean,
agree.
it's of course it's very difficult to drive and actually keep a reasonable distance between your car and the one ahead of you. But we know how important that is because we know how many accidents there are. When I first came to the firm in 1998, I've been practicing over in Tampa for a while, doing personal injury as well. But I was astounded because the caseload that I kind of started with, I had a lot of older drivers in their 90s, but they were our clients and they weren't doing anything wrong.
They weren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah. And I'm not going to even say that they were that the accidents were caused by other drivers that were old necessarily. Our older drivers, they were doing fine, but it just was, all the accidents were all coming from US 19. It was like, you could see what a dangerous road it is. And and
now they're doing more construction just north of Countryside Mall. And I think for the next few years is going to be a danger zone. And I think you're going to see more car accidents.
It's terrible up there. I mean, I have a friend that lives up off of 19, just a little bit south of Curlew. And I can't, and of course we have a lot of people, I'm sure they're used to going up there. We live more in the zone. We're kind of Clearwater, but it's terrible. And you have to be so careful.
I picked up my granddaughters last Friday up there. And it was like, oh my goodness.
Yes, right.
The way, the construction.
Right.
And B, the way they drive through the construction is amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do what we do. That's why we help people after they get injured because of somebody being careless or negligent.
We'd like for nobody to ever have an accident, or people don't intend accidents, but you can. It's so important to pay attention, and obviously, even. We're all just humans, so things happen all the time. We've got so many people on the roads now, and of course, we live in an area, and we're now in the middle of it now, where people are coming from up north. As we have our snowbirds, and tourists probably as much as anything. So people that are not that familiar with our driving conditions, which just makes it all the more likely, unfortunately, that you can have an accident.
Right, and oftentimes they're looking for a place to go.
Right.
So they're. The head swimming back and forth to see where that place is on US 19 or just driving the beach. I mean, it's a beautiful scenery there, and people are enjoying the scenery and not always looking for the car in front of them or the car behind them. Or sadly, I mean, we had a few cases where pedestrians were struck with the lights flashing and then walking across the crosswalk, and somebody's still not paying attention, just hitting them while they walk across the street.
Right. So
it is dangerous, and so that's why it's so important that if you or a loved one does get hurt in a car accident, it's important to talk to an attorney. Whether it's us, of course, we'd want it to be us, or somebody, but it's important to know what your rights are after a car accident. Yes,
because unfortunately you can end up with some fairly significant issues going forward, even if initially it doesn't seem like always hope it's not going to be too much, but the law does provide rights in these situations, and when something happens, it's definitely reasonable to take a look at it and get a little advice on what you should be doing.
And something we talk about almost every week is the fact, and people are still surprised. I still talk about it to other people. It was just today. Somebody was surprised when I said, under the laws of Florida, people are not required to carry bodily injury liability coverage. And they're just flabbergasted by that. Can you explain to our listeners what bodily injury liability coverage is, first of all?
Yeah, because I think unless you've actually had an accident and have had to find out about this, many people don't understand that. And I know you and we can be almost a little bit frustrated. I'll be talking to friends and I'm thinking, wow, but there's really no reason to know about it just living your life, right. I mean, unless you're involved in an accident or you're an attorney. So basically the law actually does require we have they call it financial responsibility, but unfortunately it's practically nothing. So all that you're actually required to have is $10,000 property damage liability, meaning $10,000 that would cover damage if you caused damage to another person's car in an accident,
or a stop sign or something like that.
True.
Get the city property repaired.
But of course, you can tell that limit was set a long time ago because today, what cars cost, I mean, that would be just a very small amount in most situations, unless it was a relatively minor accident. And then the other thing you're required to have is what they call personal injury protection, which is a medical payments type of coverage up to $10,000. But you're not required to have bodily injury liability coverage until you get into an accident at some point. If you're uninsured, then to get your license, you'll have to have $10,000 of bodily injury liability. This is the kind of coverage that, let's just say I get in an accident and I went through the red light. I just zoned out. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't mean to, but I was negligent. I caused an accident. I rear-ended somebody. They have some damages. My insurance, I'm insured. I would have bodily injury liability coverage that would pay damages to an individual that I caused damage to.
Right.
That's bodily injury liability coverage. But that's not really required, except in that very limited situation. It's practically nothing. And what you're going to see is a lot of people, it's shocking, but a lot of people have very low coverage or no coverage.
Right.
I mean, it would be common to have, if a person has it, and they'll think they have full coverage.
Well, they'll be told, I have full coverage. We hear that all the time.
Right.
Oh, don't worry. The guy who hit me said I have full coverage. I said, I don't.
And it's full coverage in terms of what the law requires. Right. But that's such a minimal amount of coverage that it actually doesn't cover hardly anything.
Doesn't help that person at all, except for maybe get their car fixed.
Right.
Maybe. Because it's only $10,000 worth of coverage.
Oh, yeah. If there's more than one car involved in the accident, $10,000, even if it was relatively minor.
We're still fighting for a client whose car got injured. There was 2 cars that were involved in the crash, and there was only $10,000 worth of coverage. Well, both cars are totaled, and the other car went through their comp and collision. And so their car that person has been compensated and taken care of. Our client didn't have comp and collision. And so months later, they're still waiting to get compensated for their car under their property damage because the other car is through the insurance company and they're taking their sweet time submitting the subrogation paperwork. And there's really not enough coverage probably to go around. There's not. They have to do a pro rata anyhow, but give them something so they can get a car. Yes, and that's the other thing people don't realize. If you have a newer car that has more retained value, then you probably have collision coverage. So if you are in an accident, you could go through your own insurance. But if your car is older, you may not. Right.
And so you get into an accident, you're out, your car's totaled. The value of your car isn't even likely to be enough it might help you get another car, but it's really you'd hate to think you have to be an insurance expert these days, but
you do. And when we talk about the property damage and if your car is totaled, some clients will come to us and say, I don't have, that's not going to replace my vehicle. Right. And unfortunately, the law doesn't require them to compensate you for an amount that will replace your vehicle. It only requires them to pay the actual value of the car based on Blue Book value and all these other software that calculates what the actual value of the car is. So we're talking about people not having bodily injury liability coverage, or certainly not having enough bodily injury liability coverage. what is the answer?
Right. And that's that.
Yeah.
And it just goes against the grain for many people because they think, well, why should my insurance pay anything? But there is a type of insurance called uninsured motorist coverage. It's uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, and it's intended to basically address the situation we're talking about, where you're in an accident, you had the person that caused the accident did not have adequate liability coverage. You have damages, and there's no insurance that's going to cover that unless you have uninsured motorist coverage. And that coverage will then pay for your damages. And I was talking to a friend and they were pointing out, well, I've got health insurance, why would I need that? Well, because if you're in a significant accident, there can be a lot of things that aren't really picked up. You have your health insurance, you may have a deductible, that sort of thing. You'll have your personal injury protection, that'll pay up to $10,000, but you still may have, once you've exhausted that, if you've got a significant thing going on, there are going to be co-payments and other things that you might not like to incur. You may also have losses like, even, for example, the loss of say the car is damaged, and the car itself is an older car like we were talking about, and it doesn't really have intrinsic value for you. It's like my car. I got an older car now. I love my car, but if its actual cash value wouldn't get me enough for a new one just like that, because the depreciation. So in that situation, if there's other insurance, if there's uninsured motorist, even though that strictly speaking isn't property damage coverage, but it's still there that will cover you for overall damages you incur. And there are a lot of things that are not covered, not to mention when you go through an accident, just the horrible experience and the pain and suffering and that sort of thing that end up being intangible, but it's not that intangible if you're experiencing it.
Exactly true. And that's why uninsured motorist coverage is always the most important insurance to have.
And it's really typically not that much more expensive.
If you're a good driver, it's really not.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has to obviously look at their own personal situation, but it's, might be a couple $100s or something. It's more. It's not really, in the scheme of things, a whole bunch more. So it's the kind of thing that really valuable coverage is something that should be obtained if you can do it.
And it protects you and your family.
Yes, right.
Should you be involved in a crash and injured because somebody didn't carry.
Yeah, maybe you've got, you have your child is old enough to drive, your wife, whichever way. So there are a lot of ways that coverage can be very important for what we hope doesn't happen. But, we
know it does.
As we were just sharing, I mean, it's, there's just so many cars on the road and there are lots of accidents. And that's why our firm has been in business since 1955, basically, because, we are always sad for anybody to have an injury, but it is an area we know from experience people need help with if that does happen. And that's been happening, in our experience over the last literally 70 years. And there are a lot more cars on the road than there were when Guy Perenich founded the firm.
That's exactly true. And that's why we always tell our listeners and even our clients that it's important to look at your policy before a crash. And we always welcome them to give us a call.
Yes.
Send us their policy, and we'll give them advice about what kind of coverage they're lacking or what kind of coverage they have. I've had many clients where they've had $100,000 worth of bodily injury liability coverage and zero UM. And so really what they've done, they paid a lot of money to the lizard in order to protect everybody else from their good driving, but they've done nothing to protect themselves and their family from everybody else's bad driving because they rejected the UM coverage.
It makes me think how often people are exposed to somebody that wants to give you financial advice on this, on that, and whatever. This insurance issue is equally important because, a component of getting your liability insurance is also to protect your own assets too, and to be able to respond if somebody is injured. But likewise, because accidents are such a reality in our community, it is important to consider not just yourself, but the people that are insured, resident insureds in your household,
Right.
because people are exposed to a lot, and we always hope it won't happen, but as we've said, it's a very real risk, and fairly unfortunate, fairly high chance that you'll experience some degree of an automobile accident at some point, and hopefully not too bad. I mean, but we know too much. We see all the time, and I would say it's probably one of the most difficult things when a person has been hurt. It was not their fault. They sustained significant injuries and economic damages, and there's no insurance or inadequate insurance to actually compensate them.
Right.
I mean, that's a terribly tough conversation to have. And of course, it's very hard for the person to understand, well, I mean, how can this be? But the reality is you have to protect yourself from the bad, inattentive drivers out there.
Right. Who are following the law, even though they don't have bodily injury liability coverage. So that's Lori Robinson. I'm Matt Noyes. We are two of the attorneys at the law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, who happily and proudly put on FLA Law on the radio every Tuesday from 5 until 6. We're here to answer your questions, address your comments or your concerns about personal injury law or any type of law or the legal system itself. We're here. 727-441-3000 is the way to call into the show to ask your question. You can also check us out on our live feed on Facebook at Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. We are live now, and you can type in your questions there, and we'll be happy to answer the questions that you have. Now, we are halfway into the show, and I know in the beginning I said we're going to talk about Social Security disability, because that is also something that we think is very important, and that people don't fully understand Social Security disability. Too many people that I say is, they're trying to milk the system. They're on Social Security disability. Why is that so wrong? I mean, why is that thought process such a wrong thought process?
It only can happen if you've had no real experience yourself with it. And, you could also see someone, but you don't really know their story.
Right.
And it can appear, person might seem okay, but many things that cause pain are not necessarily visible to other people. And so I think people have the idea that people are, quote, milking it. But truthfully, the biggest problem with Social Security disability is what a huge bureaucracy it is and how hard it is to get deserving people benefits in a timely manner. All that Social Security disability is getting your Social Security retirement early because of a medical condition that prevents you from working. So in the Social Security disability program, I mean, you've paid in, so it's not, I mean, it's a benefit that you should be entitled to if you in fact have a condition that prevents you from doing the type of work you've done. And there are different rules that apply based on how old you are. Once you get over 50, the rules recognize it's a whole lot more difficult to adjust to something totally different than what you've done, but this is another reason you need a lawyer. That we started doing this. I did, I guess, I'm going to say it's 20 years now. It might be longer, but I've been a lawyer for many, many years. I've been then. It's a very complicated system. There are so many rules to it that even though in theory a person is supposed to be able to do it on their own, I wouldn't dream of. I'm recommending that to anybody because it's just too darn complicated, and it takes a long time. The typical person is going to go through a process that's going to take a couple of years, maybe even a little longer than that, depending on circumstances. Right,
and the process all begins with filling out the application.
Right,
and in the past, we used to say, "Hey." Claimant, fill out your application and come back to us if you get denied.
Right.
We changed that, and now we help our clients fill out their applications because we have found out that even filling out the application correctly is so important as you begin the journey towards Social Security disability benefits.
And it really does turn out that it's just not easy. I mean, you can do these things online now, but, most people are not that conversant with it. And so what we found is that since most people are denied initially. And actually, you go through an initial application process, and then Social Security reviews it, and then months and months and months and months go by, and it's denied. And then you ask for reconsideration, and more months go by, and that's denied. Then you ask for a hearing in front of an administrative law judge. They're done by video. We do them out of our office. That works very well. That's pretty good, But since most of them are denied, the only real reason not to come to the lawyer right away is that why pay an attorney fee if you could be approved without the attorney's involvement? But it's so rare. There are situations where a person has a terminal condition or something. There are some things that are so clear cut, but even in those cases, people typically would like to have the help, and the fee is probably pretty nominal then, because the fees in Social Security, like personal injury matters.
I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah, it's what would be called a contingent fee. So the person never has to pay anything out of their pocket, and there is no fee unless there's actually a financial recovery. And in the case of Social Security, they set what it would be. It's 25% deducted from back benefits up to a maximum amount the Social Security establishes. But so you never have to worry about it. You're not going to have to pay the attorney. And then
it's just back benefits.
Right.
It's not future benefits as well. It's just the fee is only on the back benefits that the attorney is able to secure for you.
And we always, it's our desire to get people approved without having to go through the long process. And we are often successful at that. But the process itself is such, and the rules are such, that most times it's going to take longer. But in those cases where it's a little bit shorter, we're happy about that. That's where our goal is to get the person approved. But
I remember one client was certain that they were going to get picked up.
Yeah.
I think it was on application, it may have been on reconsideration. And so I told them, I said, listen, if you do, wonderful.
Right.
If you get picked up on application or on reconsideration, I'll waive any attorney's fees because it was not one of those types of disability that Social Security would automatically accept. It would be this one that we're still fighting about.
Yeah. Because
they got denied at application stage. They got denied at reconsideration stage.
And that's so often people, they don't realize, number one, you're living it, so you know what problems you're having. But that is not what Social Security bases their determination on. It's totally medically driven. And many times people will have medical conditions, and they'll talk about all of these different conditions they have, and they are severe conditions. But the issue is, how does it limit you and prevent you? And I typically explain, think about it as preventing you from doing the simplest kind of job you can imagine, not necessarily the job that you're doing. Now, there are some situations when a person is older where the rules are a little bit different than that, but
it's better to prepare.
It's better because, frankly, it's pretty much the simplest jobs. Or, you got to rule out that you could sit and look at a camera for surveillance in some condominium or something. They have all kinds of theoretical jobs Social Security does that, in theory, the person could perform. Not get, is the standard isn't whether you could get the job.
Right.
People will say, well, I can't drive. Well, that is not a disabling condition that you can't drive, because you could get public transport or something like that. But so it's, the issue really is how is your condition limiting you from functioning? And very often what's going to be the case for people that would not be picked up right away, a person that has a cancer that's being actively treated, and the prognosis is not likely to get you in remission within 12 months, because Social Security is looking at a 12-month duration of being unable to work. There are cases where they meet a listing, which means that the criteria it's so serious and clearly will be disabling for at least 12 months. But in the usual situation that you would find yourself in, maybe you've got chronic back pain or neck pain, other issues that in theory you might be able to function for. Maybe you could go in for a day or something or two, but if you try to do too much, you're just wiped out. You can't do anything the next day. And so there's no way that you're going to meet customary attendance requirements in a job. You're not going to be able to concentrate. Well, these are all kind of if they're a little bit more intangible. So you can still be approved. And we have many, many cases like that where people are basically disabled due to chronic pain. But those are cases that through active medical treatment with specialists, pain management or orthopedists or whatever the condition is, with good medical documentation of the limitations, then at a hearing, this can be presented in a way that usually you could expect to be successful. But it's not as simple as people would think it would be.
It's not the diagnosis that gets them eligible for Social Security disability. It's the impact the diagnosis has on their ability to work.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Because we hear a lot of our potential clients before we get to talk to them.
Right.
Oh, I have heart condition, I have diabetes, I have IBS, I have these conditions. To us, I mean, it's tragic that you have those conditions, but how do those impact your ability to work?
And that, obviously it is terrible. I always remember, and I know many people have this experience, but my father, he had all these medications he was taking, and he ended up with kidney failure. So that is one condition that you can, if you meet a listing, which he did, because it was terrible. And unfortunately he passed away as a result of it, within, probably less than a year, I'd say, from the diagnosis. But I mean, he had all these medications, and it's just overwhelming. And a lot of people, because a lot of medications keep people going, thank goodness today, that might not have been the case at earlier points. But it's really, in the normal case we're going to see, it's what are the limitations? And so, some things like different types of conditions may cause, like you could have an earlier stage of kidney, not failure, but you have kidney disease. And you could, as you approach failure, you can have situations where things happen to your body that just cause very incredibly chronic fatigue, and you can't concentrate. I mean, things that lead up to it, but they may still be able to treat those things. Yeah. But there still may be enough limitation going on that, it affects your ability to function. But you probably people can see now, it's just, I could go on forever about this stuff because it's a huge bureaucratic process. They have all these different regulations and rules. And
they have the Dictionary of Occupations that are like from 1970s.
91, 99, but that's a long time ago now.
Well, yeah.
And it's totally theoretical.
Well, we used to hear about the Walmart greeter. They don't have those anymore. We used to hear about toll booth operators, with the license by plate or toll by plates. Yeah. They don't really have those anymore, but they're still in
that book. My favorite one is nut sorter. Now, I'm sure that must be up north, and even today, I'm sure there aren't too many nut sorters. But it's a job. So they evaluate your ability to perform a job, and then a vocational expert has to be able to say there are a significant number of those jobs in the national economy, not your personal economy, the national economy. And so, usually the judge expects the vocational expert to select something more realistic than that, but it kind of gives you an illustration of just how nutty it is. Well, I should have said nutty.
There you go.
An unintended pun, but that was pretty good. Okay.
That was pretty good. And what I do appreciate about the Social Security Disability Program is that it doesn't just look at the one condition or the two conditions. It looks at the person as a whole.
Right.
And what impacts do each of them have, but what each condition has, but what impact the conditions have on each other as well. Because you can manifest other symptoms, not because it's from the heart disease or because it's from the diabetes, but because of those two combined cause other symptoms or other limitations or restrictions on your ability to work.
Right.
And so I think it's important, and I think that's really what our role kind of is really to try to have the client understand what impact overall their conditions have on them.
And there are things, again, because of how complicated the regulations are. So if you're a person that's in your 50s, and you've had a very demanding job in terms of it's just fast paced. You got to be able to do a lot, and you end up with a bunch of problems, physical problems, but you also end up with depression and anxiety that you're going to a psychiatrist for, and also a counselor, hopefully, but well documented what you're dealing with. And that creates a situation where you don't have the capability to concentrate and stay focused to do customer service, which is necessary for your particular job. Then in that situation, there are tables and charts that Social Security use. They call it the vocational medical guidelines but it's a combination of age, physical capabilities, and all this that they use to analyze it. But that's an example of a combination of impairments, physical and mental,
right,
that will be considered together, and then given a number of different factors can result in an approval of disability.
And that's why the application stage is
right.
very important as well. That's Lloyd Robinson. I'm Matt Noyes. We are here for the next 14 minutes or so. Here we are live on FLA Law on the radio. We are here to take your questions, your comments, or your concerns about Social Security, disability, personal injury, car accidents, workers' compensation, or really any type of law question or concern that you want to talk about. The number is 727-441-3000. We are here live to answer your questions, or we are also live on Facebook at Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, Injury Lawyers. Jump on that page. We're typing your question there. We can answer your questions there. But Lori and I can talk forever.
That's right.
We have been talking for decades together.
That is true.
And so,
the only thing that we probably don't enjoy doing as much, but some of our younger lawyers are, I was going to say, with legal implications, because don't we also have like a TikTok thing we do?
I think we do have TikTok someplace,
somewhere. Not for this program.
And I do have. I do volunteer to do that, but I volunteer to do it because I'm not on TikTok, so I can't see how foolish I really look. But
some of our younger staff members and Jacqueline, one of our younger partners, she's a TikTok star.
Yeah, she is a star, and she does them really good. I look goofy. Jacqueline looks really good, so she knows exactly what to say and when to say it. Me, I just bumble through them all. So
that TikTok is way after my time, I would say.
Yes.
But it's fun, and we like being a part of the community, and obviously, reaching out to people of all different age groups, right, because you can have. And the Social Security is an example of this, because it does, depending on what age group you're in, your life experience obviously is different. The legal aspects of your injury will be different, and how it may play into a Social Security claim. We do have young people that sadly sometimes are in a situation where they apply for disability and are approved. I'm thinking, as we were just talking here, about a young woman that, she was in her 40s, early, probably even late 30s possibly, and she had very terrible chronic back pain, had to have a spinal cord stimulator, and then they took it out because it really wasn't even helping. Wow. And if you were to look at her, she's a pretty young woman, you would not know what she goes through, but her medical record was very, very solid, and it took us quite a while in her case, because it is a challenge when you're younger. And we actually initially had an unsuccessful result with her. Particular judge, which most of our judges are pretty open-minded now, but it's a little tougher one. And it is tougher when you're younger. We had to reapply, and we went through the process again, and she was approved, thank goodness, because last thing in the world this young lady wanted to be doing is receiving Social Security disability.
Right. She would have worked.
She would have worked, and she just, I would say it's one of all the years I've been practicing, I find the Social Security case is the most emotionally challenging for me, because it is difficult. No one really wants to be in that position.
Right. How many times have we heard our clients saying, I would give all this time, all this hassle, all the Social Security disability benefits back if I could work, if I wasn't in pain and I could work.
Right. So it's very, very tough. So, if you're in that situation, but we spend a lot of time talking to people who have questions. I encourage people to call the firm. Always happy to set a phone conference and just give you a general idea, because the other thing that happens is, particularly as people do get a little bit older. So once you are in your 50s, you can have a situation where you start to realize, I've been pushing and pushing and pushing, but I'm not going to be able to keep doing this.
Right.
And that's a time when it's not a bad idea to talk with an attorney that does Social Security, so you have an understanding of how the system works and can kind of prepare yourself, because the things we've been talking about, the medical record, people don't think about what Social Security is going to be looking at. So you can get into a situation, I talk often with people on this topic about, start talking to your doctors specifically about the problems you're having at your work, because maybe they can help. And if they can help, fantastic.
Right.
But if they are unable, if at a certain point it's like, well, we're doing what we can. We give you this medication. I'm sorry. This is kind of where you're at. If the medical record is documenting that you're having limitations that are forcing you ultimately to stop working, now you're in a situation where you're going to have a good claim for Social Security disability. And actually, if you're in your 50s, that's a situation that could possibly result in an approval without having to go through the whole long process. Always better to prepare yourself for the long-term process,
right.
but there are definitely situations that we're able to work with that aren't necessarily the long-term process. But so important to know about it, because it's when you're young, you think nothing will ever happen. As you get older, you begin to appreciate, I can see where I have some physical issues and other sometimes mental issues that.
Yeah, I want to talk about working as well, because we kind of touched base on that. We talked to a lot of clients or potential clients, people that are working but still want to think about applying for Social Security disability. Can you tell our listeners about working? To what threshold can they still work and still apply for Social Security?
It's very important to understand that Social Security is a total disability standard. However, you currently, if you earn less than or no more than $1,620 gross in a month, if you are working fewer hours and earning that because of your condition, your medical condition, you can't do more, then that would not be what they call substantial gainful activity. And you could apply for Social Security disability and you could be approved working very, very part-time, which that's going to be more like a 10 or a 15-hour, 20 hours per week tops, and not $1 over $1,620 gross per month.
Now, the closer you get to 1620, the harder it is, because Social Security can say, well, gosh, if you work the extra hour, you could get the threshold. So
it really does need to be pretty clear that that your hours are below that amount, your income is below that amount, because of your conditions preventing you from being able to sustain work above that amount. So it's not like you say to the employer, well, I want to apply for Social Security disability. I need to earn less than this.
Right.
That's not the way to think about it.
Right.
That's not right. I mean, what's at issue is you need to realistically look at your situation. And when a person's actually asking about this, often the truth is they're at a point where they're wondering how they're going to do it.
Right.
And of course it's very difficult because of how long the process takes. And most people don't have a lot of cash savings when they're in this situation to wait out the process. And you do have to kind of plan for how you're going to get by.
Right. That's the hardest answer. That's the hardest question to answer, is how am I going to survive a year and a half, 2 years with no income?
Right.
Don't have that answer.
Right. Now, that's something that you have to work out in your own personal situation, unfortunately.
Now, if somebody gets picked up on Social Security disability, can they work?
Yes, below the level we're talking about. However, there are also, if you did experience medical improvement, which would be fantastic if you got a little bit better, they have programs that allow you to kind of try and see if you can work after you've been approved. And then in that scenario, there are situations where if you are able to work, great, but if not, if you drop below that level, then you can be reinstated very quickly. But
I think it's 90 days trial to work or something like that.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's like, so there's a 9-month trial work period where you could earn any amount. And then there's a 3-year period where they have an expedited period of eligibility, where if you earned more than the $1,620 this year, it goes up each year by about $70. Then you would just not get your benefit that month, and then if you went below, then the next month you would, and then even in 5 years, you can have an expedited reinstatement if you did get back to work, but then unfortunately, your condition did not permit you to continue.
Good. We do have a little bit more time. We've been talking about Social Security disability, and that's with people working
have those work credits.
And earning the work credits. We represent a lot of people that just don't have those work credits.
Right.
What avenues do they have?
And that's similar, because you could not have the work credits because you hadn't worked enough to get those credits in a job where you pay into the Social Security system. Or sometimes what happens is, particularly with somebody that maybe has stayed at home to raise a family or do whatever, you might have not, because they have to be relatively recent, approximately 5 years from when you last worked pretty steady. So all these rules, but there is what's called SSI, which is the welfare version of the Social Security disability program. Same medical standard, everything is exactly the same. But if you are destitute, which is no more than $2,000 in the bank and savings, you have one car, and you're not earning, and you're not able to work really basically at all, then in that situation you can qualify for SSI, which is supplemental security income, I think is what it stands for. But basically it's the same thing as the Social Security disability, but it's not coming out of what you've paid into Social Security because you don't have enough work credits, or you've been out of work for a very long time, 5 years plus, when you're applying. But it is something that is available. We represent many, many people that do qualify for SSI, and it's something that should be looked into. You can, once you're approved for SSI, you would then be approved for Medicaid, which in our state, that's pretty much the way you get Medicaid unless you have a minor child and then meet the income thresholds. But if you don't have a minor child, then often that's really the only way to be approved.
Right. And so I think it's important for the listeners to know that even if you aren't able to have the work credits, that Social Security is still available for you.
Yes. Now, it is a reduced amount. It's not, because it's not based on any of your earnings. It's not based
on your money.
Currently, this year, I think it's $943 a month. And then they have various things they subtract based on your living circumstance and that sort of thing. But that's what currently is available.
And I wanted to add one more thing before we wrap it up too, and that is we hear callers saying, I'm 68 years old, I'm 70 years old, I'm getting Social Security retirement. Can I get Social Security disability as well? What's the answer?
And the answer is no, thinking that it would be something different and maybe more because of being disabled. No. Full retirement age for most people for Social Security now is 67. But basically, once you're retirement age, then you're getting your Social Security retirement. And all Social Security disability ever is somebody who isn't at retirement age, who cannot work because of their medical condition, their disabling condition, and gets approved to receive Social Security disability, which is just your Social Security retirement early, because of the medical condition. So there's nothing additional. There's nothing special about the disability part of it as such. It's really just a benefit that you should be able to get because you paid into the system, and then you're not able to get to the end because of a medical condition that prevents it. So, and that's why it's available.
Well, this is wrapping up our hour. Lori, thank you very much.
All right.
As our listeners can appreciate, there's a lot of stuff that we need to know, whether it's an auto accident or Social Security or other areas. And so come back next week on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I will be here. I have a tax expert next week, so he'll be able to answer questions that you have regarding taxes as well. But we appreciate you taking the time. I am Matthew Noyes with Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes. Thank you for listening. And as always, drive safely and watch out for those who don't. Take care. Good night.